Welcome to the Movie Business Podcast, picking up where Movie Business Book left off. I'm Jason Squire, hosting a wide range of industry talent and executives to answer fundamental questions about the business today. Here we go. And we want to welcome you to our special annual review and predictions, the Crystal Ball episode, a look at 2025, with ILAN HAIMOFF, partner and entertainment practice leader at accounting firm GHJ. His specialty includes forensic accounting on behalf of talent, investors, co-producers, and distributors. With over 30 years serving clients in entertainment and financial services, ILAN has overseen countless audits and has studied the evolving business from a unique vantage point. So we're very lucky to have him back for this episode. Welcome, ILAN.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure doing this with you.
Well, it's also fun. And so,
yes, it is.
Just to begin, the mantra for 2025 is continued recovery and transition to hoped-for stability in the face of unsustainable debt. This means more layoffs, more fear, and more consolidation, as ILAN predicted last year. We'll cover 9 topics: management, talent, production, artificial intelligence, distribution, exhibition, streaming, sports licensing, and other media. Let me start with management. Has management learned anything after COVID and the strikes? You seem to be more focused on stock price than content and employees. ILAN?
From what I see, management, they look to the coming year, may be more focused on what I call surviving through a period of contraction in Hollywood. That means, unfortunately, continuing to cut costs, continuing to preserve cash flow where possible, potentially looking at mergers, acquisitions, and even spin-offs. I think we've heard management looking at the upcoming, in 2025, spin-off of the cable channels from Comcast, and that's now public. All of these are elements that are part of management focusing on how to survive through this challenging and somewhat unpredictable period for Hollywood.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So let's take a moment to review a studio report card, starting with Warner Brothers Discovery. They made a $9.1 billion write-down on its cable assets, laid off 1,000 people. Stock is down about 9% using a December benchmark for all the stock prices. Paramount Global took a $6 billion write-down on its cable assets and lost 2,000 jobs. The studio will be sold in 2025. We'll cover that in a moment. The stock is down about 25%. So this year, Paramount ownership will officially transfer from one family dynasty to another, with Shari Redstone, daughter of Sumner Redstone, who built the media giant, ceding control to Oracle owner Larry Ellison with his son David Ellison's Skydance in an $8 billion investment. The investment outcome will be approximately 77% to Larry Ellison's Pinnacle Media and 23% to Jerry Cardinale's Redbird Capital. ILAN?
I mean, I think that you are sharing examples of companies that are simply trying to find a way to stay above water. And Paramount is a good example of that, where they needed to find a new home, as Paramount in particular, and I would even add Warner Brothers to it, may have been with the highest exposure of cable becoming, unfortunately, an area that's contracting.
Right.
The two of those studios, I think, may be the highest in terms of exposure to linear television licensing simply dwindling.
I mean, it's still a pretty powerful side of the business, but its decline seems to be inevitable. And it's too bad, but technology marches on, and that's the basis of a lot of these changes. So let's turn to Comcast. They're in better shape. The stock is down slightly, but they've been cutting 1,000 jobs. In a bold move, they're spinning off their cable networks, again, just like you indicated, except for Bravo, into a standalone public company. And Disney is in really good shape. The stock is up strongly, about 30% or so, but some 8,000 job cuts since Bob Iger returned. Netflix doing very well. The stock has been soaring, up 80% last year. And Sony is doing fine. The stock is up about 5%. They bought the theater chain Alamo Drafthouse. Sony has no streaming service, so they license theatricals to Netflix. However, at PlayStation, it laid off some 900 employees. Ilan?
Yeah, those are really great summaries of these companies. I think the only thing I would add, Comcast is a company that is making a significant amount of revenue on its broadband services. So even though they may be losing cable subscribers, there is a continued increase in providing for broadband, which means Wi-Fi. I mean, people need Wi-Fi more so than ever before, and that is incredibly not only sustaining their business, but actually growing. The other thing I was going to share, if I really look at the strongest players in our industry, you've just listed them. I think that Netflix is very strong, strongly positioned. Comcast, which obviously owns NBC Universal, is doing really well. And Disney has recovered well and doing incredibly well. The key, again, is these are companies that are able to have good diversity in their business model. With Disney, obviously, they're not relying solely on cable revenue coming in, but they've got all kinds of other businesses. And I think that's really the key is your sustainability means that you have to have less dependency, especially as you look to the future, on linear television.
That's a good point. A couple of more beats. Turning to Redbox, the DVD rental kiosk at supermarkets. The company was liquidated in bankruptcy with over 1,000 put out of work. And MoviePass, their former CEO Mitch Lowe pleaded guilty to federal securities fraud in cheating investors about the company's profitability. He faces 5 years in prison. So what's the good news? The Marvel Cinematic Universe is now the highest grossing franchise in movie history with $30 billion from theaters. Ilan?
I think the most important additional comment I would make is that the business model of today takes the theatrical exhibition very seriously. And I think that it is a pivotal, critical way to bring your content out to the world in a way that ultimately provides for substantial subsequent revenues. And so I think that the only thing I was going to add here is it is, but in my mind, no question that the resiliency of the theatrical exhibition is proven, and management and a lot of the studios are taking it very seriously. They want to make sure on the theatrical side that films are theatrically exhibited. It's just such a critical phase of the life cycle of the film nowadays.
And of course, at the same time, journalists continue to take swipes at theatrical, predicting its demise. This has gone on for, decades, and it's incorrect. So let's turn to talent.
Right, absolutely. The fact, look, Wicked is just another example of another theatrical release that just shows how powerful it could be, the theatrical release.
Right. And provided a lot of oxygen to the theatrical industry. So we turn to talent. For actors, wondering how the new formula for streaming residuals is playing out. This is policed apparently by a SAG committee meeting with management. So let's hope that it's working.
To add to what you just shared, I think we have to recognize that the world, when we look at talent, there's obviously different classifications, the A-list talent versus the rest of the talent. But I think overall, everyone is under pressure to get less compensation up front now so than ever before. And there's this shift, from what I'm hearing, to compensate you for success more. There's this shift away from throwing lots and lots of cash up front to throwing in some money up front, but then looking for ways to compensate you for success more so than ever before. And I think that seems to be the trending that I'm noticing. And again, I don't have the exposure on the residual side, but that's one thing that I'm noticing.
That's the case because streamers have no real back end. So there are no traditional residuals from streaming shows or productions. And so lawyers, agents, and managers and financial people have been working on new formulas, as you say. And you do get the bird's eye view of all of this, so you're quite lucky.
I know, but I would say that I think the conversation is back to older traditional models of some form of a back end.
Yeah.
Even the streamers. And I'm not sure exactly how that will all shake out, but the conversation is around, we simply can't throw cash at everyone anymore up front. We need to look for other ways to provide you with a compensation structure that is sustainable and also correlated to success.
Mm-hmm.
What success is for streamers, we don't really have all that visibility, but it could be, are you in the top 5 or 10 shows? How many people are subscribing because they want to see the show? I mean, there could be a variety of different things that they ultimately will come up with, but I think there's going to be a shift toward, okay, we'll pay you some upfront, but mostly as it relates to success.
Very good. There has been talk, I think, of providing some kind of bonus upfront, as if for a streamer, right? For a streamer show, if it was very, very successful, or as a way to entice top-tier talent to a streaming-only production, to provide some benefit of what they otherwise might have achieved if they had a theatrical success in that project, and therefore gained back-end extra profits. There are all sorts of formulas, as you know, and we'll see what happens.
Exactly. We'll see. But I think that there seems to be a shift.
Very good. One more beat about representation. After 3 years as a public company, Endeavor is going private, to be acquired in 2025 by majority stakeholder private equity firm Silver Lake for about $13 billion. So that's something also to watch out for. So this brings us to production. Overall, there are budget reductions, more streamer investment in pictures and series shooting overseas, as you predicted, Ilan. Distributors are more cautious about theatrical, knowing that moving a title to streaming eliminates marketing costs. Streamers still provide an overwhelming amount of product for the consumer to choose from. Ilan?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with everything you've said. I would only add that we're seeing the importance of the production tax credits or incentives, especially here in California, where the governor is looking to make it more attractive to keep production here in the state. I'm not sure if it's enough, or I'm not sure if it's going to make that much of an impact for the coming year. But at the moment, the places productions are going to continue to be Canada, the UK, the state of Georgia, the state of New York, and more recently, I'm hearing more and more about New Jersey, where production is still going again outside of California to all of these different territories that are really still providing a much more attractive package. Especially, by the way, the UK, in connection with their latest adjustments to the programs that are focusing on independent film in particular. So it is a very attractive location to go to.
Very good. And that brings us to a New York Times report about tax incentives. It said that over the last 20 years, states have given productions more than $25 billion in filming incentives. 38 states now offer some form of incentive, and Georgia's program has poured more than $5 billion into Hollywood since 2015. A report found that every dollar Georgia spends on film tax incentives generates $6.30 in value to the state economy. And California recently doubled its annual limit to $750 million, but in my view, it's too little too late. Ilan?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with everything you said, especially that last comment.
And so we should turn to artificial intelligence. It's everywhere. A tool that enhances workflow but also replaces jobs, from artists to script readers. Ilan?
I was going to share, this is a relatively new studio that was put together recently called Promise, which is a generative AI studio that was backed by Peter Cherning's company, the Northrop company. And here's a company that's going to really focus on AI technology to develop film or other programs. I think artificial intelligence is probably still in its early stage and really embracing, I think AI could help in so many different ways, both in making the production more efficient, but I also believe that it may actually reduce the marketing cost, which has been quite significant and prohibitive in bringing content to life. And I think with AI, maybe we're going to be able to see more quality content see the light. And I think that's really the objective, is making projects more efficient and ultimately, hopefully, seeing more projects completed.
That's so true and very helpful. AI, as you say, is here to stay, and it'll impact or delete many jobs. After long strikes, the creative guilds won the right to consult and decide about using AI in their work. Writers cannot be required to use AI, but craftspeople can be required. Last year, the umbrella crafts union IATSE, with 70,000 members, signed a contract with management that paves the way for using AI across their specialties. Also, OpenAI introduced Sora, its generative artificial intelligence tool, creating super realistic video based on written prompts. It's an industry game changer, and there have been many companies since. An example is Meta, introduced Meta Movie Gen for creating and editing videos with sound and music based on simple text prompts. This will compete with OpenAI's Sora. And Amazon announced a text-to-video tool to help sellers create brief videos on their selling site. We've seen all generative AI commercials last year, and movies are next. Ilan?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add is we have to recognize that with every new technology that comes in and becomes a part of the process, we have to recognize that there may be legal challenges to work through. There may be technology, security, and other system controls to ensure are in place to protect the creators, to ensure that there is transparency, to ensure that ultimately it's done in a way that is fair and equitable. And I think that's the only thing I was going to add is AI is still, in some people's minds, a threat. And how do you embrace a technology, but at the same time protect the creator?
Yes, thank you. Absolutely.
That's important to keep in mind.
Really. The Ankler reported on the new application, Full Frame. It speeds up development but eliminates readers as a time-honored entry-level position. Drop in a PDF and script coverage is done in minutes with logline, synopsis, character breakdown, charging some $3 per script, $5 per book. It won't replace decision-making, but it sure will streamline evaluating submissions. Also, Meta and Google have quietly offered studios tens of millions of dollars to license their libraries for AI training, as reported by Sean McNulty in The Wake Up from The Ankler, his daily feed. Let's turn to distribution. Box office is still struggling to get back to pre-pandemic levels, but we've had a healthy mix of summer and holiday franchises. Is the glass half full or half empty? Ilan?
I think that I am more optimistic today than I've ever been with respect to the theatrical exhibition and that whole window. All of us recognize the challenges we've had during COVID, but it is now time to see the box office results probably getting to the 2019 levels as we look at 2025. That's what I predict for next year. I hope I'm right. It is an incredible area in terms of not just making money, but more importantly, again, being that initial introduction of the program to the world. I think that there are companies such as A24, Neon, and others that are looking for ways to get quality independent film out there in such an efficient way. And I'm not looking just at the larger studios, but the smaller studios and the smaller companies able to make this work. To me, it's just such a sign of not just recovery, but I think a sign that we're going to see growth. You mentioned already the records that we're seeing, just this last Thanksgiving holiday in 2024 being, I think, the strongest in the history of Thanksgiving. I think that all of that is just a sign that I believe we're headed into a full recovery as we look at 2025.
Well, that's a terrific, optimistic prediction. And I'm totally in agreement with that. The summer was really big with these huge grosses. Deadpool Wolverine, $1.2 billion at the box office. Inside Out 2, $1.6 billion, the highest grossing animated movie in history. Both those pictures from Disney. Despicable Me 4, grossing nearly $1 billion. Kung Fu Panda 4, $500 million with a B, both from Universal. And as you say, smaller surprise hits like It Ends With Us from Sony, which grossed $350 million on a $25 million budget. And horror movies like Longlegs from Neon that grossed $100 million on a $10 million budget. As you mentioned, we've had a record-breaking Thanksgiving with the trifecta of Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2, followed by the holiday treat Mustafa the Lion King. And here's a fun fact. The streamer Mubi released its first theatrical title, The Substance with Demi Moore, with a $66 million box office gross on an $18 million budget. So that's very good news for the dynamic theatrical part of the business. Ilan?
The only thing I wanted to actually see if maybe you can comment on it is the softness of the China market for U.S.-made films. I know there's been a shift away from appetite for American-made films in China, and therefore that market is becoming softer and less reliable. But I wanted to see what you think. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, that particular territory is becoming a little bit less reliable than ever before.
Yes, that's true. And there's a very hungry young movie-going audience in China. As a result, the grosses are very high, and there is this pivot away from non-local language movies to embrace the local language culture and movies even stronger. It is a tough market because, as you know, only some 30 to 35 overseas-made movies, non-China language movies, English language movies, other language movies are allowed to enter the Chinese market. And the government decides what release date you're going to have. And that's very inhibiting, and it's difficult to market sometimes English language movies because of these limitations, and the box office suffers as a result. And speaking of box office, let's turn to exhibition. Theaters have managed to recover after the historic 1-2 punch of the COVID shutdown and loss of screens, and they need popular titles to fill their theaters. It's still a boom or bust business relying on tentpoles. Ilan?
The only thing I was going to add is I think that I'm not an expert in the area, but it appears as if original script, original ideas are becoming more successful than ever before. I think franchise titles are at risk as compared to original script and original story. And it just seems as if the consumer may be losing interest with the franchise and is looking for and hungry for new content. It's hard to see it exactly, how it's impacting the content that is being, greenlit by the studios, but it's something that we have to recognize that may be part of the reason companies like Neon and A24 are seeing more success.
And those two companies are certainly dynamic in the area of independent distribution. Good for them. A shout out to both of those companies. A little more exhibition news. As mentioned earlier, Sony Pictures Entertainment bought a theater chain, Alamo Drafthouse Cinemas, for an estimated $200 million with the same management under the Sony division, Sony Pictures Experiences. A little history. Before 1948, most studios owned production, distribution, and exhibition. The Justice Department declared this anti-competitive, forcing theater-owning studios to sell their theaters in a 1948 decision known as U.S. versus Paramount, or the consent decrees. This was ended in 2020 by the Justice Department. So after 75 years, studios can own theaters again. Ilan?
I mean, the comment I was going to make is, why not? I mean, if you can have the benefit of 100% of the box office result as opposed to the average of 40 to 50%, considering theatrical exhibition is so important and is another way to touch the consumer, to be connected with the consumer directly. If I am the studio, there may be business reasons why I may want to do that now that I'm allowed to. It's hard to see exactly how Sony will exploit their ownership of the chain, but one could speculate that it's an opportunity for Sony to promote their other programs, other films, other television programs, perhaps even their video games. I mean, there could be so many ways that the theater chains could be just one more way to connect with their consumer.
That's so true and well said. Now that we've covered exhibition, let's pivot to location-based entertainment. Netflix announced that they are building 2 permanent locations, repurposing closed department stores and malls in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and Dallas, Texas, to create a massive venue of restaurants, games, and replicas of Netflix hits, so visitors can experience the glass bridge from Squid Game, walk around a set from Bridgerton, a mini indoor theme park. For its part, Sony Pictures Experiences also oversees Wonderverse, a large location-based entertainment in a Chicago mall, with concerts, games, virtual reality, rides, food, and drinks, all branded with Sony product. For example, on the menu, a Ghostbusters marshmallow dessert. It's something like a Dave & Buster's on steroids. And Universal is planning a 2025 opening of Universal Epic Universe, a new Orlando, Florida theme park highlighting experiences from Harry Potter, Super Nintendo, How to Train Your Dragon, and more. Ilan?
I have nothing else to add other than I really want to try those. This sounds really exciting.
Well, there's a night out or a field trip for us to consider.
For sure.
Before we do, we should turn to streaming. Ad-supported streaming subscriptions have proven very popular, boosting subscriber numbers. A fun fact, 70% of Netflix customers are overseas. Ilan?
It's hard to see whether we're going to have the same number of streamers by the end of next year. I think that many of them are still non-profitable, unfortunately. We're seeing bundling of different services now. We're seeing the potential for merging of these different services. There may be even the possibility of exits of some and shutting down some of those services. Netflix is one that has been able to come up with the right formula. You've got Amazon, which clearly will be continuing to do that. And I think besides those two, it's clear that you're going to have to see some adjustments and some changes in order for these models to be sustainable. So I think Netflix, you've already mentioned, is a strong player. The question is, who else will stay around?
This is something else to track closely. Thank you. For the consumer, ad-supported streaming is like a return to linear television with commercials. Meanwhile, linear TV and cable continue to lose market share, as we have mentioned. Now, here's something. YouTube is more popular than any of the streaming services. On viewership alone, Nielsen reports streaming at 41%, cable 26%, broadcast at 22%. And the streamers have shifted their strategy from market share to profitability. However, there's still the serial churners who cancel, then sign up again often. Roughly 40% of all new subscriptions and cancellation. Ilan?
I think it's a good point to bring up the ad-supported streaming trend. There is the traditional streamers now that are offering ad-based lower subscription fees, which hopefully will reduce the churn. If you're only paying $6 a month as opposed to $20, maybe you won't cancel as much. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I think, though, you've mentioned something else, which is important to bring up. The digital television stations, that's what I call them. Also the fast channels, also advertising-supported streaming. And all of these new services where you don't even have to be a subscriber. I think you may want to subscribe because you get more benefit, like Tubi. But generally speaking, you don't really need to be a subscriber to enjoy the content. What you do need to do is be subject to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of commercials. So I think the idea of not having to pay for subscription and yet still enjoy the content is, to me, taking us right back, and I think you said that, to traditional linear television. Just instead of getting it through cable, you're just getting it over the top. That's it. That's really the big difference.
So the more things change, the more they remain the same. Oh, that's a really important trend that we should follow.
There you go.
There's another new trend in bundling streamers. Rival studios want to partner on a sports streaming bundle, a product they call Venu, V-E-N-U. Disney Plus and Max proposing an ad-supported $17 a month or ad-free $30 a month service, but this has been halted for now because a federal judge is delaying it, so we'll stay tuned. Ilan?
Yeah, and I've already spoken about bundling. I think that a bundling of services, doesn't it make you feel like we're going back to cable once again, over the top? Instead of being linear, it's just moving to be digital.
Very good. And some interesting statistics. According to Nielsen, Tubi, owned by Fox, registers higher than Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, and Apple TV in total viewing time. It's almost even with Disney Plus. Only Netflix, YouTube, and Amazon are still ahead. And Mubi, as mentioned, has become a distributor. As we noted earlier, its first theatrical title, The Substance with Demi Moore, was a box office success. And remember, Sony has no streaming service. They license movies to Netflix and Disney Plus for some $3 billion annually. Ilan?
Nothing else to add on that one.
And so let's turn to a streaming report card. Netflix has 282 million subscribers worldwide, annually spending $17 billion on programming and $2.5 billion in marketing. Ending password sharing led to a big boost in subscriber numbers, so the company is highly profitable. Amazon Prime Video, with 200 million subscribers, spends $11 billion on television series, movies, and music, and $1 billion for Thursday Night Football. They spent $50 million per episode on Citadel, the highest in history. There's no report on their profitability. Disney Plus has some 153 million global subscribers, and they've announced that they're targeting $1 billion in profits in 2025. That was a surprising number. Max from Warner Brothers Discovery has 110 million global subscribers. It was last year the first studio streamer to be profitable for 1 year. Paramount Plus has 72 million global subscribers and is now profitable through their franchises Yellowstone and Star Trek. Peacock from Comcast NBC Universal has 36 million in the United States and not yet profitable. And Apple TV Plus has an estimated 25 million subscribers with no word of profitability. They've spent over $20 billion on content, but is cutting back on big-budget movies like the $200 million Wolves with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. Ilan?
I was listening to the listing, and the one thing that I would share with you is I subscribed to Peacock for the first time this year. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight, even though they may seem to have the least number of subscribers, they've got incredible content, and they are investing in more exclusive content for Peacock. And you wonder, because we've talked about this earlier, where they're going with Peacock in the future as they divest or will ultimately spin off the cable channels. But I think we need to watch Peacock next year and see how it develops, despite the fact it may not be profitable yet. There have been rumors, again, I don't know if it's true or not true, but as Paramount gets acquired, will Paramount Plus still be in existence, or could that be merged with another service? And the question is, could it be that Peacock will absorb Paramount Plus or become one? But I think we need to watch Peacock in particular. There's something about that service that may potentially see growth in. It just seems like as if there may be bigger plans. We just don't know yet.
That's, again, an important topic to keep a close eye on. Thank you. So we now turn to sports licensing. Is the new emphasis on billion-dollar global sports licensing going to pay off? Ilan?
Yeah, with respect to sports, it's an area that I'm not as familiar with, but I from what I see, there is the potential for streamers, which we just spoke about, to be getting deeper and deeper into this area, particularly live sports. I know Netflix has done that recently. Certainly, others are trying to get into it. I think it's just to be determined. But more importantly, and this is really the key, valuation seems to be unclear at the moment. So we don't know how high sports programs will be, particularly live sports. But clearly, the streamers are watching and are very likely to probably push the valuations even higher. So that's the part that we need to watch. It's really the sports is something that is yet to be an area that will be moving more and more into streaming, but again, at what cost? And I think we'll have to wait and see.
Right. And they really have, in sports licensing, there really been some eye-popping numbers. Netflix entered into a 10-year, $5 billion deal for the WWE Raw weekly show, bringing the loyal $17 million fan base of World Wrestling Entertainment to Netflix from the USA Cable Network. WWE parent is TKO Holdings, owned by Endeavor Group Holdings. And Netflix also exclusively presented the live Jake Paul-Mike Tyson boxing exhibition, though there were buffering issues. Disney's ESPN, Comcast's NBC Sports, and Amazon Prime Video are combining to pay a total of $76 billion for NBA rights over 11 years. Also, the NBA rejected Warner Bros. Discovery's TNT offer, ending an association of more than 30 years. The deal moved to Amazon. Meanwhile, WNBA also secured an 11-year deal with the same three partners, ESPN, NBC, and Amazon, for a combined $2.2 billion, or some $200 million per season, starting in 2026. More than 3 times the old deal. The WNBA All-Star Game was some of the best basketball I've seen in a very long time. And Apple will pay $85 million over 7 years for Major League Baseball's Friday night games. Roku is paying $30 million for MLB's Saturday morning games over 3 years. Ilan?
Yeah, I know. I think you're basically providing examples of the trending that I think we're all seeing. Is it's simply going to grow. It's just the beginning, I think, at the moment. And we'll have to wait and see how much more of live sports will be moving from traditional media up to streaming. Likely more.
That's it. We'll continue to track that. And finally, in other media, disappointing sales for Apple Vision Pro, their virtual reality goggles, which had a retail price of $3,499 each. Ilan?
Yeah, that seems really expensive. That may be the reason. Prices need to go down, but we'll have to wait and see. The only thing I was going to add, one is we talked about cable. I think what's interesting is a lot of cable networks are getting a new life through obtaining streaming rights as they negotiate, again, with studios. And we'll have to wait and see. But there seems to be some shift toward allowing cable networks to get that additional streaming right. I think that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing that I just want to bring up, it's hard to know right now where it's going, but podcasts are having one right now being recorded, but podcasts is an area that could explode in terms of revenue streams. It's not an easy place to generate revenue, but again, advertising may be shifting more and more toward podcasts, especially if you have a popular one. And I think that is one area that we see talent moving to more. We see production companies being created to create high quality podcast series. So that's something to watch, is where is podcasting going in the future?
Very good. And I sometimes wonder that myself. And more fun facts, Disney has taken a $1.6 billion equity stake in Epic Games, maker of Fortnite, to collaborate on new games. And Sony bought half of the entire Michael Jackson music catalog for an estimated $650 million. Well, that just about wraps it up. Ilan, would you like the last word?
I just wanted to say again, thank you for including me. I know this is, I believe, the 7th time we're doing it, and can't wait for next year to see how our predictions end up.
I'm with you. It's been a pleasure. Let's thank ILAN HAIMOFF for joining again for the Crystal Ball episode 2025 edition on the Movie Business Podcast. Ilan, thank you so much.
Thank you.